Good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grace, and this is the KMG Show. Albert J. Nock, the American man of letters, he once wondered, this was a long time ago, how could you tell if you were entering a new dark age? Well, that's been on my mind a lot lately. In 2020, here's Peter Hitchens writing in the Mail on Sunday. So far, the new Sky TV version of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World is not as bad as I feared it would be. It is hard to bring this brilliant, bitter book to the screen. So much of Huxley's fantasy came true long before he predicted it would, so a lot of it is just not shocking anymore. When Huxley wrote it in the 1930s, lifelong marriage was normal and looked as if it would stay that way. Children were the expected result of sex, and drug taking was despised. His clever idea that a future society would actively encourage promiscuity, abolish parenthood and privacy, and make drug taking almost compulsory was too good a prophecy. It's almost happened, and as Huxley feared, we have come to love our own enslavement by pleasure. I used to think Huxley had been completely right and George Orwell's alternative nightmare of a surveillance state based on terror, secret police, spies, and torture had been wrong. But recently I've come to the grim conclusion that we will end up with a mixture of both. On one thing, they both agreed. Hell, whichever sort we end up with, will use the metric system. So I got some comments on this. From T.J. Martinell, what Orwell feared were those who would ban books. What Huxley feared was that there would be no reason to ban a book, for there would be no one who wanted to read one. And this comes from an article at scroll.in, Orwell versus Huxley versus Zamyatin, who would win a dystopian fiction contest. Now, we hear a lot talk about liberty and, the rights of Englishmen or the rights of Americans. It's just been remarkable to me how this has completely vanished in 2020. And who's fighting? Who's fighting for liberty? Who's fighting for freedom? No, it's all about safety now. Safety first, safety always, safety above all. How long are we going to wear masks for? Forever, presumably. I don't know that does anyone really think that these masks are protecting them? I suppose some do. Here's a story from Breitbart. Protect the NHS message that scared away patients could contribute to extra deaths. This is by Victoria Friedman. The government's message at the height of the pandemic to stay home, protect the NHS, save lives, frightened off patients from seeking medical help, resulting in admissions for non-coronavirus related causes to fall by up to 90%. Patients were believed to have either been frightened of catching the virus or concerned that they would be a burden on their own taxpayer-funded National Health Service. As a result, conditions were not treated when they should have, says the healthcare analyst firm Dr. Foster. The report, seen by the Telegraph, revealed that admissions for prostate cancer, the number one cause of cancer for men, fell by 64%. Bowel cancer, the second biggest cancer killer in the UK, saw more than a 39% fewer admissions. Cervical and breast cancers dropped 30%. That's admissions. There were also a large number of falls in hospital attendance for lung cancer, 43%, congestive cardiac failure, 38%, and heart attacks, 27%. The largest drop, however, was for gastrointestinal disorders, which had fallen by 90%. There's a big story happening in the United States, and it's about Joe Biden, who's the Democratic candidate, and his son, Hunter Biden. And a laptop was delivered to Rudy Giuliani, and this is purported to be a copy of the hard drive of Hunter Biden's computer, which has a lot of damaging emails indicating pretty clearly that Hunter Biden was selling influence, and that one of the recipients of this was his father, Joe Biden. Twitter decided that this story should not be promoted, should not be amplified. Why? Because it was hacked information, supposedly. Facebook decided to suppress it because it could not be confirmed. Breitbart Lucas Nolan writes, 5 days after the New York Post published a bombshell story about Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, and the family's alleged ties to Burisma, the Post remains blacklisted from Twitter for sharing the story. The newspaper has refused to delete its tweets linking to the stories, and Twitter has refused to relent on the Post's suspension, despite CEO Jack Dorsey admitting that blocking links on the platform is wrong. Recently, the New York Post published a bombshell story that indicated that Joe Biden may have met with an advisor to the board of Burisma while he was vice president, arranged by his son Hunter, who was working for as a lobbyist for the company at the time. Biden has previously claimed to have never been involved in his son's business, stating, quote, "I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings," unquote. But leaked private emails from Hunter Biden's laptop obtained by the Post allegedly showed that Hunter introduced his father to a Burisma executive less than a year before Biden, acting as vice president, pressured the Ukrainian government into firing a prosecutor who was investigating the company. Shortly after the story broke, many found themselves having trouble sharing it across social media. This censorship came just days after executives from both Facebook and Twitter joined the Biden transition team. Shortly after sharing the story on social media, the New York Post found its Twitter account locked. Twitter marked links to the Post story as unsafe. Since then, links to a follow-up story by the Post have also been marked as unsafe when accessed by Twitter users. 5 days since the Post found its account locked, the publication is still unable to access its account. New York Post deputy political editor Emmett Jo Morris stated in a post on Twitter, "It's Monday morning, 2 weeks before the presidential election, and the New York Post has been barred from posting on Twitter for 5 days and counting." Twitter may be attempting to force the Post to remove its original tweet about the Biden story in order to gain access to the account. This is common practice when someone's post is a tweet that Twitter deems is against site rules. If the Post refuses to remove the link to its article, then it could continue to remain locked out of the account. This means that Twitter has effectively silenced one of America's major mainstream news publications from its platform just weeks before the presidential election. And I guess, don't they say that the big crime is the cover-up? Well, the cover-up is going on in plain sight, and the media, or most of it, is cheering for the cover-up, remarkably so. One of the things we learned in 2020 is that the media is one of the deadliest enemies of free speech. What's the response been from the media and their pals? Russia, 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 Russia. It's everything. Everything with them comes down to Russia. Some Canadian on Twitter, frankly, my dear, responded to a piece by Rex Murphy, which I'll get to in a minute. All this has been readily debunked again and again, even by the FBI and Justice Department. It's Russian propaganda. Why do you print this crap? To embarrass yourself? You take your readership for idiots? As for Rex Murphy, he represents the nosediving of intelligence, to which I responded, "Show me on this doll where the Russian hurt you." There is a story on Fox News. Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe on Monday said that Hunter Biden's laptop is not part of some Russian disinformation campaign, amid claims from House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff suggesting otherwise. Ratcliffe, during an interview on Mornings with Maria, was asked about the allegations from Schiff, a Democrat in California, who over the weekend said that the Hunter Biden email suggesting Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden had knowledge of and was allegedly involved in his son's business dealings. Schiff, Ratcliffe said, "It's funny that some of the people who complain the most about intelligence being politicized are the ones politicizing the intelligence." Unfortunately, as Adam Schiff who said the intelligence community believes the Hunter Biden laptop and emails on it are part of a Russian disinformation campaign. Let me be clear. The intelligence community doesn't believe that because there is no intelligence that supports that. And we have shared no intelligence with Adam Schiff or any member of Congress. You might recall that we heard about Russia stealing the election for over 3 years. And then when the Democrats came to issue their impeachment indictment against Donald Trump, it wasn't Russia. It was the Ukraine. John Nolte writes, the far-left New York Times published a lengthy hit piece against the New York Post about the Hunter Biden emails. Bottom line with yours truly, when it comes to the shady gathering of the truth for the public good, I refuse to play by two separate sets of rules. I refuse to live in a world where it's okay for the New York Times to make Trump's tax returns public, but not okay to make Hunter Biden's business emails public. There are two headlines in the New York Times hit piece. The first is that the Times does not in any way dispute the authenticity of the emails. In fact, no one has disputed the authenticity of the emails, including Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and the Biden campaign. In fact, outlets like Fox News have started to confirm the authenticity of the emails. And if the emails do prove to be authentic, and I believe they are authentic, that means that Joe Biden is the equivalent of a mafia godfather who's been using his family as a front for decades to sell out his country and enrich himself. The second headline in the New York Times piece is that the New York Times is not angry because the New York Post story is in some way false or untrue. No, the New York Times is angry because the New York Post is reporting the truth. You know, a few years back, Breitbart ran headlong into this phenomenon when we proved Lena Dunham lied in her 2013 memoir about being raped by a college Republican while attending Oberlin College. After Breitbart News published the Dunham bombshell, we were attacked, not because anything in our story was wrong. No one could dispute the reporting. Even Lena Dunham and her publisher admitted the reporting was on the money. No, what everyone was so angry over was that we dared to report a truth they did not want told. In other words, they weren't angry we got the story wrong, they were angry we got the story right. We're seeing the same with the Hunter Biden emails. No one, and I mean no one, including the Bidens, is disputing the accuracy of the Post's reporting. They're just mad the truth is being reported, or they're focused on where the emails might have come from, and without any evidence, at least so far, claiming the emails were gained through an illegal hack, maybe even by the dreaded Russians. Who cares where the material came from? Who cares? The only time the media make a point of how the sausage is made is when the media do not want to report on the sausage. And unlike the New York Times, who just a few weeks ago published President Trump's private tax returns, the Post detailed exactly how it came into possession of Hunter's emails. There's simply no moral difference between publishing the tax returns and Hunter's emails. No moral difference whatsoever. The liars and hypocrites and hacks do not work at the New York Post. Those desperate to mislead the public by hiding the truth from the public do not work at the New York Post. No, they work at the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS, Twitter, Google, and Facebook. The truth is the truth is the truth, and I want to know the truth. Let's take a look at the chat. My Trail of Disgrace says, and some masks may be giving people bacterial infections. In the town hall, the Trump town hall last week, Savannah Guthrie was absolutely mortified when Trump brought up a recent study, a CDC study, suggesting that masks were not, in fact, a protection against contracting COVID-19. And she insisted again and again that is not what the report said, and that is what the report said. Heck McNeck says, I can't imagine the panic and hair pulling going on behind the scenes at Joe's campaign. Makes me wonder what kind of insane October surprise they've kept in their quiver for Trump. Buddy says they've shot their wad on October surprises. Everything's out already. Oh, the kidnapping plot of Michigan governor, did it move the needle? So Trump says liberate Michigan, and some kooks come up with a plan to kidnap the governor of Michigan in a PT Cruiser, of all things. And somehow this is Trump's fault. Let's see. Don from Beyond says, although there is a global committee whose members know the truth and are preparing a huge lawsuit, see Lou Rockwell website. Okay. There is a long piece, but a very useful piece by Paul Sperry in Real Clear Investigations. Joe Biden's boosters wrote his prodigal son's entire resume. Hunter Biden profited from his father's political connections long before he struck questionable deals in countries where Joe Biden was undertaking diplomatic missions as vice president. In fact, virtually all the jobs listed on his resume, going back to his first position out of college, which paid a six-figure salary, came courtesy of the former six-term senators, donors, lobbyists, and allies, a Real Clear Investigations examination has found. One document reviewed by RCI reveals that a Biden associate admitted finding employment for Hunter Biden, specifically as a special favor to his father, then a Senate leader running for president. He secured a $1.2 million gig on Wall Street for his young son, even though it was understood he had no experience in high finance. Many of his generous patrons, in turn, ended up with legislation and policies favorable to their businesses or investments. An RCI review of lobbying records and legislative actions taken by the elder Biden confirms that the 50-year-old Hunter has been trading on his Democratic father's political influence his entire adult life, raises questions about possible influence peddling, government watchdogs and former federal investigators say. In addition, the more than 2 decades-long pattern of nepotism casts fresh doubt on Joe Biden's recent statements that he never discussed business with his son and that his activities posed no conflicts of interest. No fewer than 3 committees in the Republican-controlled Senate have opened probes into potential Biden family conflicts. Investigators are also poring over Treasury Department records that have flagged suspicious activities involving Hunter's banking transactions and business deals that may be connected to his father's political influence. Hunter Biden's Ukraine-China connections are just one element of the Biden corruption story, said Tom Fitton, president of the Washington-based watchdog group Judicial Watch, who contends Biden used both the office of vice president and the Senate to advance his son's personal interest. In each case, Hunter Biden appeared underqualified for the positions he obtained. All the while, he was a chronic abuser of alcohol and drugs, including crack cocaine, and has cycled in and out of no fewer than 6 drug rehab treatment programs, according to published reports. He's also been the subject of at least 2 drug-related investigations by police, one in 1988 and another in 2016, according to federal records and reports. A 3rd drug investigation resulted in his discharge from the U.S. Navy Reserve in 24. So, fresh out of college, credit card giant MBNA put him on his payroll as a senior vice president, earning more than $100,000 a year plus an undisclosed signing bonus. Delaware-based MBNA at the time was Biden's largest donor and lobbying the Delaware senator for bankruptcy reforms that would make it harder for consumers to declare bankruptcy and write off credit card debt. Besides a job for Hunter, bank executives and employees gave generously to Joe Biden's campaign, $214,000 total. And one top executive even bought Biden's Wilmington, Delaware home for more than $200,000 above the market value, real estate records show. The exec paid top dollar, $1.2 million, for the old house, even though it lacked central air conditioning. MBNA also flew Biden and his wife to events and covered their travel costs. Senator Biden eventually came through for MBNA by sponsoring and whipping votes in the Senate to pass the Bankruptcy Abuse Prevention Act. When Tom Brokaw asked Biden during the 2008 presidential campaign whether it was wrong for someone like you in the middle of all this to have your son collecting money from this big credit card company while you were on the Senate floor protecting its interests, Biden gave an answer he would repeat many times in the future: absolutely not, arguing that it was completely appropriate and that Hunter deserved the position and generous salary because he graduated from Yale. In 1998, Hunter capitalized on the family name when he joined President Clinton's Commerce Department. In spite of having no experience in the dot-com industry, he was appointed Executive Director of E-commerce Policy Coordination, pulling down another six-figure salary plus bonuses. He landed the job after his father's longtime campaign manager and lawyer William Oldecker called then Commerce Secretary William Daley, who'd also worked on Biden's campaigns, and put in a good word for his son. After President Bush took over the Commerce Department, Hunter left the government and joined Oldecker to open a lobbying shop in Washington, just blocks from Congress, where he gained access to exclusive business and political deals. Federal disclosure shows Hunter Biden and his firm billed millions of dollars while lobbying on behalf of a host of hospitals and private colleges and universities, among other clients. In a 2006 disclosure, Hunter said his clients were seeking federal appropriations dollars. He won the contract to represent St. Joseph's University from an old Biden family friend who worked in government relations at the university and proposed he solicit earmarks for one of its programs in Philadelphia. The friend, Robert Scoraruccia, remarked in a press interview that Hunter had a very strong last name that really paid off in terms of our lobbying efforts. These clients, like MBNA, also favored bankruptcy reforms to make it harder for patients and students to discharge debt in bankruptcy filings. And there's a series of jobs here that Hunter Biden is not qualified for. And I suppose it's nice to have powerful friends, as Hunter Biden did, and even nicer to have a powerful father who was in the Senate forever. And I joked in the past that Joe Biden really has, what are his accomplishments all those years in the Senate? Well, there's an accomplishment. He made it impossible for students to discharge student loan debt in bankruptcy. That's quite an accomplishment, wouldn't you say? David Marcus writes in The Federalist, remember January? I know it feels like several lifetimes ago, the before times of life as we used to know it. But think back to the biggest story of those chilly days. It wasn't the Chinese virus slowly spreading to our shores or the Democratic presidential primary. No, it was the impeachment of the President of the United States. This week's bombshell New York Post story on Hunter Biden now shows what many of us suspected. The impeachment was a ridiculous sham. The basis for the impeachment, for those whose recollections are understandably shaky, was that President Trump pressured the president of Ukraine to launch investigations into the energy company Burisma for the purely political purpose of hurting Joe Biden. Central to that allegation was the argument that Trump and the United States had no legitimate interest in seeing Burisma investigated. If the trove of emails from Hunter Biden's laptop are accurate, and they have not been disputed, then this argument falls to pieces. Pam Bondi, working for the Trump defense team, said this back during the national ordeal about the Democratic House managers' constant attempts to call allegations against the Bidens baseless. Quote, in their trial memorandum, the House managers described this as baseless. Now, why did they say that? Why did they invoke Biden or Burisma over 400 times? The reason they needed to do that is because they're here saying that the president must be impeached and removed from office for raising a concern. And that's why we have all the talk about this today. They say sham. They say baseless. They say this because it's okay for someone to say, hey, you know what? Maybe there's something here worth raising. Then their case crumbles, unquote. And here we are. If these emails are accurate, then it is clear as the summer sun that Hunter Biden was absolutely selling access to his father and the Obama administration in exchange for his lavish salary. This was literally at the heart of the Trump defense, and it really is a silver bullet. What reasonable person would even suggest that the President of the United States may not push allies to investigate legitimate corruption involving the executive branch of the federal government? House Republicans this week sent requests for information to the FBI to see if they were in possession of those emails at the time of impeachment. It's an important question that the American people deserve an answer to borrow a phrase from another show-stopping trial of the century. If the email's legit, you must acquit. As far as I know, there is no way to reverse an impeachment, but if there were one, and now would be the time. Remember, impeachment is forever. It was the big catchphrase right before "don't touch your face" shot up to number one. When was the last time you ever heard a Democrat say the word impeachment? If this black mark on Trump's presidency is so very damning, then why isn't the Biden campaign making a big deal about it? Or frankly, talking about it at all? The reason, of course, is that even back in January, Democrats were concerned that should Biden win the nomination, some of these chickens could come home to roost. Now they have, and my goodness, they are laying some very heavy eggs. What Trump must make clear in the final weeks of the election is that not only was his impeachment a giant lie, a despicable ploy by desperate Democrats, but it was also a massive cover-up on behalf of Joe Biden. It is time for what we naively thought would be the biggest story of 2020, namely impeachment, to make its way back into this election, not as Democrats intended as a negative for Trump, but as his ultimate vindication against charges we now know to be baseless, crude, and deeply cynical. Margot Cleveland writes in The Federalist, Hunter Biden's addiction is not the issue. Joe Biden's addiction is his addiction to power and money. And as the evidence of the former vice president's corruption and the national security risk our country would face by electing Biden, that is the story of the MacBook hard drive, not the salacious verified photographs and videos of Hunter Biden. For nearly a week, corporate media successfully ignored or downplayed news of the trove of Hunter Biden's emails, texts, photographs, and videos recovered from a laptop abandoned at a Delaware computer repair store. Then confirmation of the authenticity of the materials first reported in the New York Post and the release of a second set of emails, also confirmed from another source, finally forced the press to acknowledge the issue. On Friday evening, Bo Erickson of CBS News asked Joe Biden about the New York Post story as the Democrat candidate for president departed from a campaign stop in Michigan. I have no response. It's another smear campaign right up your alley. Those are the questions you always asked. Biden snipped at the longtime reporter. With more details coming out daily, this non-answer will not placate even a compliant press for long, nor will the Russia disinformation narrative pushed by Biden's media boosters suffice, because multiple confirmations of the evidence establish this story is not disinformation. So the dissembling will start with Biden attempting to make the story about his son's drug addiction. We already saw this when President Trump hit his opponent during the first presidential debate with the fact that once Biden became vice president, Hunter made a fortune in Ukraine, China, and Moscow, and various other places. Biden's first response was outright denial. That is not true. That won't work with the constantly accumulating evidence from the hard drive and the other independent emails. So Biden's second tack will likely be his campaign's official response once they regroup over the weekend. My son, like a lot of people at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaking it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it. And I'm proud of him. I'm proud of my son. Biden punched back during the first presidential debate. Just since when is, drug addiction or having been a drug addict, that this is some sort of admirable characteristic now? Oh, no. Hands off Hunter Biden. Poor Hunter Biden. He's had such a miserable life. But it's a very moving story. That's what we're told. Wisely, President Trump ignored the misdirection, replying, but why was he given tens of millions of dollars? Moderator Chris Wallace rescued Biden by interjecting, we've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial subjects. Well, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make a judgment call here. While Hunter Biden's highly lucrative position on the board of Ukrainian company Burisma has received some press, the media all but ignored the U.S. Senate committee report on Hunter Biden, Burisma, and corruption, the impact on U.S. government policy and related concerns. This report not only details examples of extensive and complex financial transactions involving the Bidens, it also describes the quandary other U.S. governmental officials faced as they attempted to guide and support Ukraine's anti-corruption efforts. The report's key finding included concerns raised by officials in Vice President Joe Biden's office about the perception of a conflict of interest with respect to Hunter Biden's role on Burisma's board, and a senior State Department's officials warning to Vice President Biden or his staff that Hunter Biden's position on Burisma's board has enabled Russian disinformation efforts and risk undermining U.S. policy in Ukraine. The report also confirmed that former Secretary of State John Kerry had knowledge of Hunter Biden's role on Burisma's board, even though he falsely denied that knowledge during a town hall event in 2019. Evidence of this scandal is too strong to ignore or to allow Joe Biden, the Democratic Party, or corporate media to cast aside as an unseemly attack on a recovering drug addict, and not merely because of the corruption at issue. Every country, every foreign politician or political faction, and every corrupt oligarch or business that paid for access has the emails, notes, receipts, itineraries, fund transfers, and maybe even photographs or recordings. And that makes Joe Biden a national security risk. Actually, over the weekend, the Daily Mail reported, we found out that Hunter Biden was involved with another kleptocracy, Kazakhstan. Is there any corrupt foreign pie that Hunter did not have his fingers in? And one more, a story from the Federalist, and I suppose this would be shocking if people were still capable of being shocked in 2020. Social media company Twitter finished its week of apparently politically motivated censorship on its platform by banning tweets regarding the efficacy of masks from Scott Atlas, a member of the White House scientific team battling the coronavirus. Atlas, a senior fellow at Stanford's Hoover Institute, not only had his tweets removed, he was banned from tweeting until he deleted the tweets that Twitter, for unclear reasons, objects to. And the tweets, they take issue with the masks as a panacea. And I guess Twitter has decided, and and he's links to numerous studies. It quotes the World Health Organization: the widespread use of masks by healthy people in the community setting is not supported by high quality or direct scientific evidence, and there are potential benefits and harms to consider. The CDC had said our systematic review found no significant effect of face masks on transmission of laboratory-confirmed influenza. I also cited an article giving a detailed explanation of the reasons why masks might not prevent spread. Notwithstanding this evidence regarding arguably the most important and contentious debate raging in American society, the constant mandate of masks, it appears some 20-something with his pronouns in his Twitter bio just pushed a button and erased scientifically accurate information. For some reason, which hopefully Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey can explain when he is dragged before the Senate, Atlas was silenced by the tech giant. This comes the same week that Twitter blocked New York Post articles alleging improprieties involving presidential campaign Joe Biden, his son Hunter, and the Ukrainian energy company Burisma. For good measure, Twitter also banned the New York Post's official Twitter account from the platform. Universal masking is a subject of scientific dispute and just happens to be a contentious political argument in the midst of the 2020 presidential election. Under the dubious policy of stopping the spread of disinformation, Twitter has silenced an expert on the matter for what seems to be politically motivated reasons. It would be a shame if screen captures of Atlas's tweets somehow found their way onto Twitter. I know Jack Dorsey would be dismayed if he's not in Indonesia engaging in fasting and spiritual development. So, here we have respected experts who cite actual studies, and no, can't have that. Just can't have that because science is all about uniformity. You may have thought that science was about skepticism, but you would be wrong about that. The story from let's take a look at the chat, see what's happening there. Don from Beyond says, why doesn't the president do something about the Section 230 issue? Can't he issue an executive order or something? Well, it appears that the FCC is looking into this, and the FCC believes it has the power to rule on how Section 230 is interpreted. And the head of the FCC does not seem very happy with Twitter and Facebook. Okay, who's another Yale grad? Okay. The purge will only get worse, says Jay Smith. Watch the Corbett report on YouTube to know where everyone is going. Jay Smith again. Contra coup, legally stores cannot refuse someone without a shirt and without shoes. Do you understand that much? Otherwise, show me the law. Chogokin 666, the guys at FTN were sort of minimizing the Biden scandal in comparison to Jared Kushner influence peddling. I don't think it's comparable. Well, what I saw on Twitter today is that, it's obvious that we have the journalist, some form of it still exists, that influential people are given a memo, every morning. These are the lines to push in interviews, in columns on social media. And the line today is that it's Trump who represents a national security threat. It's Trump who is a criminal. And what we all know about the media is that they accuse others of what they are doing or what their own people, the people they like, are doing. Again, Don from Beyond, what about the corporate concerns like Walmart or McDonald's? They have more power than government. Like my town of Deltona has no mandatory masks, yet certain stores, restaurants are still insisting. Oh, Jeffrey Toobin. Yeah, we'll get to him. Curse of Trump strikes again. Again from Don from Beyond, amazing articles on Lou Rockwell explain exactly what shenanigans are going on. In no way have Cox's postulates been followed or achieved. They even explain how the tests are manipulated. Head McNeck says PT cruisers are the opposite of cop magnets. Smart choice. One of the things I greatly enjoyed on Breaking Bad was, Walt Jr. Wanted to get a car, and his mother was determined, that he was going to get a sensible vehicle. And that turned out to be a used PT Cruiser, and it was rather awkward because Walt Jr. says something like this, Mom, this is a chick car? Yeah. Yes. And on more news on the suppression front, from the Mail, police are set to review race hate probe into journalists Darren Grimes and David Starkey to ensure it is proportionate after historians Dan Black's comments during his YouTube interview. Scotland Yard launched a probe against Grimes for allegedly stirring up racial hatred after sharing his interview with Starkey online. During the interview, radio presenter and author Starkey claimed slavery was not genocide, otherwise there wouldn't be so many damn blacks in Africa or in Britain at the height of the Black Lives Matter protest. The Metropolitan Police's decision to probe Grimes, 27, has sparked a freedom of speech backlash from politicians and journalists. Home Secretary Priti Patel, ex-Home Secretary Sajid Javid, and former Lib Dem leader Tim Farron have all slammed the Met's police's pursuit of Grimes. It seemed until fairly recently that there were some things that only some people could say. What would you call them? The stately old homos of Britain, people like Quentin Crisp and David Starkey, and a few others. But now, even that's gone. Even that is gone. Let's look at lockdown skeptics. Yes, they talk about Scott Atlas being silenced. Oh, here's another good one. Michael Levitt, joint winner of the 2014 Nobel Prize for Chemistry and professor of structural biology at Stanford, has been no-platformed by the organizers of a conference on biosystems design and synthetic biology, even though these fields both owe a huge debt to his work. He took to Twitter yesterday to break the news. My keynote, uninvited from Biodesign Conference. Too many calls by other speakers threatened to quit if you were there. They all complained about your COVID claims. Computational biology and biodesign are based on my work. Time to cancel them and me. New dark age cometh. And Lockdown Skeptics comments, this is an absolute disgrace. Scientists aren't supposed to no-platform other scientists because they disagree with their scientific views. That's completely antithetical to the spirit of scientific inquiry. The scientists who threatened to pull out if Michael Levitt was allowed to participate should be ashamed of themselves. I don't know. Why not just let them pull out? Is everyone going to leave? Let them pull out and let them explain that they were attempting to browbeat a scientific organization. We don't like this man. He's a meanie, so he must be silenced. It's all too much. Daniel Hannan in The Telegraph wonders why Peru has the toughest lockdown in the world and still ended up with the worst fatality rate. Yeah, I mentioned Rex Murphy. I've been interviewed a couple of times by Rex Murphy when he had a show on CBC. He is one of the few sane men in my country. And he writes in the National Post, when Twitter last week suppressed the New York Post story about Joe Biden and his son Hunter, the whole house of North American journalism should have unanimously blasted the tech giant for its outrageous and blindly partisan attempt to kill the news. When Twitter just a little later summoned the gall to ban the chief communications officer of the President of the United States, Kayleigh McEnany, that same house of journalism should have fired off a thunderbolt of condemnation. Who or what in hell is vacuous Twitter to ban the White House press secretary? Twitter should have faced identical consequences, for it took parallel action on its huge site to suffocate the same story released via one of the largest and most historic American newspapers, containing serious allegations regarding the character and actions of one of the presidential candidates and his son. Let me preliminarily put it in clear terms. Regardless of how the ultimate accuracy of the New York Post article, and setting aside concerns over how the documents were obtained, Twitter is not the communist Chinese government and Facebook is not an arm of the North Korean press. Both should mightily strive not to be seen as in any way adopting the tactics of these regimes when it comes to the flow of information and news to its users. It is not for Facebook or Twitter to arrogate to themselves authority to edit, to ban, to censor the news as determined by journalists. It is not for Facebook or Twitter to imitate the Roman Catholic Church's days of the Index Librorum Prohibitorum, or Stalin at the height of his tyranny dictating what people could say, writers could write, and newspapers could publish, or by his command erasing what had been previously written. It is known that Burisma, the Ukrainian energy company that Hunter Biden was involved with, was also at the time facing a criminal investigation. According to the New York Post, what the emails from the recovered laptop indicate is that Hunter Biden had introduced a top Burisma executive to his father less than a year before the then vice president influenced the Ukrainian government to fire the prosecutor. Of Joe Biden's involvement in the chief prosecutor's firing, there is no dispute. Biden cheerfully, eerily, to my mind, boasted of it on tape in a talk to the Council on Foreign Relations. It is readily available on YouTube. If you would like just the flamboyant, triumphant nub of Biden's brag, here it is. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the billion. I'm going to be leaving here in, I think it was about 6 hours. I looked at them and said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor is not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch, he got fired. There is ordinary cockiness, and then there is Joe Biden cockiness. Twitter and Facebook are throwing out poorly manufactured excuses for the behavior over the Post story. The plain and unadorned fact is that these two Silicon Valley monopolists were waiting the election. They were suppressing news to the advantage of the Democratic candidate. They had no business doing this. Jack Dorsey of Twitter is not some Solon guarding the public ear. This is an information atrocity. And what makes it even worse is how a huge swath of the establishment media have ignored, stonewalled, or done everything to discredit the New York Post. Here in Canada, too, CBC and CTV have ridden past this outrage with arrogant aplomb. They would report on a hangnail if it were Trump's, and perhaps link up with Michael Avenatti for comment. The behavior of the news media and the tech companies in this and other instances are deplorable. The news media in particular have so toxic an aversion to Trump that they have abandoned all pretense to real reporting. Most of us already knew Twitter could be pretty disgusting, knew already of its vulgarity, its meanness, and its Twitter mobs who swarm attack and cancel individuals and companies. Now we also know it is false to its ideals of open communication, non-bias, and neutrality. It has demonstrated hostility to the flow of information in the greatest election in the world. That's beyond disgusting. It is an insult to democracy and the people of that democracy. It is arrogant. It is wrong, and it should be made to answer for its despicable behavior. Bravo. Bravo, Rex Murphy. Let's see what Alex Berenson has to say. Bulletin from Dr. Anthony Fauci. The Orange Man called me a disaster. Score. Got to be worth at least another $1 for my book deal. Now, where the hell is my mask? If I can't find it in 10 seconds, I'm canceling New Year's. That'll teach him. Bulletin from Dr. Anthony Fauci. Trump was in fine form today. He was leaving for a campaign appearance, and he said that Joe Biden is criminal, and that you, the media, are criminal too, because you refuse to discuss this story. And of course, the media reacted as one might expect. But of course, I'm not sure that the people who work for the media understand just how despised they are by most people. It's a story from the National File from Patrick Howley. Texas poll watcher Raymond T. Stewart, a retired police officer, submitted a sworn affidavit Thursday that was provided to the Harris County District Attorney's Office. That affidavit, exclusively obtained by National File, alleges that a Houston precinct judge and staff illegally used a stack of driver's licenses in their possession to allow people to vote illegally in the 2020 election at a drive-through voting window created by the coronavirus pandemic. Stewart's affidavit and photos of the scheme are presented below. The acting precinct judge identity has been confirmed by the Harris County Clerk's Office, and insiders identify her as a Democrat. Yeah, but of course, social media and Wikipedia are going to tell you that no, that there's no problem. There's no problem with voting fraud in 2020. No. You know what else is not a problem? That there's 2 weeks to go before the election, and Joe Biden has stopped campaigning. I guess what? Senator McNasty did that when he was running for president because of the 2008 economic disaster. But no, it's, I guess Biden has to recharge his batteries. I was thinking of coming up with a parody of Subterranean Homesick Blues. Biden's in the basement mixing up his medicine, something like that. From Hannah Blow, Joe Biden kicked off the week by attempting to rally Democrats around a positive message of finishing the presidential race strong, a call that comes after he called a lid remaining off the campaign trail until Thursday's presidential debate. This is the tweet today, 6:30 a.m., 15 days, let's finish strong. My idea of strength is not hiding in a Delaware basement, but perhaps I've not been keeping up with recent trends sufficiently. Yes, Joe Concha, the Biden campaign has called a lid until Thursday. Biden also called a lid last Wednesday, shortly after the New York Post revealed smoking gun emails. He has largely refused to answer questions about the report and lashed out at CBS reporter Bo Erickson after he had asked for a response to the Post story on Friday. Yes, it's another smear campaign right up your alley. Those are the questions you always ask. You see, You see how conceited and arrogant and angry Joe Biden is. Donald Trump gets asked about white nationalists. Do you disavow white nationalists, white supremacists? He just gets asked this over and over and over. What Joe Biden has got is softball questions, such as, oh, now that we've all read that rubbish Atlantic article and we know, what Trump said about gallant soldiers, what does that say about his soul? Yes, that's an actual question that was fixed up between the Biden campaign beforehand. So one would think that Joe Biden would understand that occasionally he would be asked a question that he wouldn't particularly want to answer. But no, apparently it is the job of the media to be entirely subservient to him. Biden's decision to stay off the campaign trail for 3 days follows a pattern he's established in recent weeks, frequently avoiding the campaign trail. The presidential hopeful spent over a third of September off the trail and kicked off October by following suit. It's from October the 1st from Ando Solander News. Biden campaign calls a lid for in-person events at 11:20 a.m. There's a virtual fundraiser for 5 p.m. Meanwhile, President Trump is campaigning with a vengeance, as Breitbart News reported, holding 2 events in Arizona on Monday alone. The president is expected to hold a rally in Erie, Pennsylvania on Tuesday and Gastonia, North Carolina on Wednesday. Just doesn't this all seem so terribly weak? I mean, weak in both senses of the word. I mean, it would seem that Joe Biden is absolutely terrified of getting COVID-19. But Donald Trump has already got COVID-19. He's a man in his 70s, but he's showing extraordinary energy in this campaign. And, it's like Osama bin Laden said about the weak horse and the strong horse. The people are attracted to the strong horse, and Joe Biden is not the strong horse. John Nolte writes, Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden has been in hiding for days and intends to remain in hiding at least until Thursday night's presidential debate, and I think we all know why. Think about this. Joe Biden's mental frailty, his position on packing the Supreme Court, and his son Hunter's emails are so bad, he and his campaign believe he is better off hiding from the public than going out and campaigning during the final 2 weeks of the election. First, though, let's talk about how outrageous it is for Biden to be so smug and secure in his victory, so smug and secure the national media will campaign on his behalf, that he thinks he can sit it out, hug the ball, run out the clock, while President Donald Trump is out there doing 2 and 3 events a day while being president. Never in my 54 years have I seen anything like this. Okay, nothing about how corrupt and evil the national political media are in any way surprises me. Nothing. The media have embraced political terrorism, not a surprise. The media are basically running Joe Biden's campaign against Trump, not a surprise. No joke. If we found out the media have hired assassins to take out their political opponents, that would not surprise me in the least. Same with big tech. But Biden thinks that he can win this thing with TV ads and media coverage only. I mean, on top of making almost no campaign appearances, he has almost no ground game. No one's knocking on doors for Joe. But we all know the main reasons why Biden is hiding. First off, Biden's scared of being asked questions about his obvious desire to pack the Supreme Court with additional justices, which would mean the end of democracy. That's not hyperbole. If you appoint a bunch of unelected Democrats to the Supreme Court with lifetime tenure, that's the end of democracy. That's turning the court over to an unaccountable legislator. Let's see, if you intend to pack the court, it is better off to remain in hiding than to admit that. Then there are his son, Hunter's emails. And those emails are beyond damning. If they are indeed Hunter's, and I believe they are, they expose Biden as a traitor and something akin to a mafia godfather. You heard my own reason, which is I think that Joe Biden is absolutely terrified of getting COVID-19. Biden made an appearance in Durham, North Carolina on Sunday, where he repeated two familiar hoaxes that have become staples of his rhetoric on the stump. This is from Joel Pollack during interviews and even on the debate stage. Biden repeated the false claim that Trump called neo-Nazis in Charlottesville very fine people, when in fact he said they should be condemned totally. Vice President Mike Pence refuted this hoax on live TV during the vice presidential debate. Atlantic suckers and losers hoax. Biden repeated the debunked claim that President Trump referred to soldiers as suckers and losers. This is the same man who looks at Americans who put their lives on the line for the nation, like so many tens of thousands in North Carolina have done, like my son did. Oh, there it is again, winning a Bronze Star. He calls them suckers and losers. Who the hell does he think he is talking about? These are heroes. This is an exaggerated version of the Atlantic story, which was based on anonymous sources, has not been corroborated, and has been refuted by over a dozen witnesses. Biden did not apparently answer questions about allegations that his son, Hunter, sold access to the White House when he was vice president. Instead, he answered a question about his milkshake. Let's have a look at the chat. Let's see. Contra coup, masks that covers a wide range of face coverings. Masking up since the end of March hasn't stopped the spread of the virus at all. It's my understanding that for these masks to be effective, there must be a very tight fit. Now, of course, people are wearing, again, as pointed out, all sorts of things as masks. People are reusing masks. People are touching masks, bringing them up and down, so that they can eat or talk. And that does not seem like very good mask discipline. Not at all, in fact. The sun, okay. When I was at a chemistry conference in Boston a couple of years ago, says Rustin Shackelford, some of the male professors acted like hysterical homosexuals over Trump during their talk. PBS, you turn on PBS, you get all the same stories over and over again. The glorious 1960s, the glorious civil rights movement, the glorious gay rights movement, the glorious feminist movement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, since the 1960s, or arguably even earlier, there's been no resistance to this permanent revolution, the culture war, they call it. Oh, gay marriage. Nobody wants gay marriage. That's ridiculous. You must be some sort of extremist. And then, well, of course, gay marriage. It's the right thing to do. It almost so fast, and the conservatives, so-called, always surrender. They always surrendered. They're catamites is what they are. And here you have a fellow like Trump, and as he said in 2016, I'm going to teach you how to win. And people on the left are simply unable to accept this. No. You're supposed to lose. That's your role, is to lose with good humor. So, Jim Kunstler this morning, American Gothic horror. There's something wicked we spoke of coming our way. Well, it came. Now we know why Nancy Pelosi has been running around in a fright mask with her hair on fire. And it's not just a ghoulish anticipation of Halloween. Her Democratic Party is in extremis. It is shot through with the cancer of falsehood and the wormholes of crime acquired through decades of playing fast and loose with the machinery of government. Nancy has been informed, and she remains stuck in the rage stage of the grief cycle. Somebody sent her a copy of that hard drive. The thing she feared would not end well is actually turning out worse than she thought. I have a theory about Joe Biden. He didn't want to run for president, not one eensy-weensy bit. He wanted a nice, quiet retirement with his fat government pension, plus sundry millions that had somehow found its way into his bank account over the years. He had a fabulous $16 million gentleman's estate to gambol upon with his beloved grandchildren. The developing brain fog was actually a comfort, allowing him to forget the rigors of public service and all the tedious gathering of honoraria, shall we say. But then they came for him. The party called. Rather specifically, his old Kimosabe, Barack Obama, called him in for that ominous sit-down and gave him the bad news. Joe, you've got to run. Bernie, Liz, and the rest of those bozos, they won't keep a lid on it. You're in this thing as deep as we are, and it's getting a little hairy. You've got to do it for the sake of the party and all of our friends. And so Joe Biden was shanghaied into running for president. He was given a bodyguard of news media, including those crucial new additions, the social media, Twitter and Facebook, where increasingly information was hubbed for transmission among the voters. They would protect him infallibly from any damaging narratives. In fact, they would generate powerful counter-narratives to keep their adversaries off balance. If Joe could just roll with it until November 3rd, they could lay all their problems to rest, bury all that annoying insinuendo about the hobgoblin deep state, and finally breathe easy. And so, trailing rather pathetically in the primary elections after being dubbed an old racist by his opponents and drubbed in Iowa and New Hampshire, Joe somehow managed to sweep the table on Super Tuesday, apparently due to the single magical endorsement of one Congressman James Clyburn, a narrative that was swallowed like a May River oyster by the credulous all over the land. And thus anointed, Joe retreated to his fabled basement for the whole election season, venturing intermittently into empty parking lots and airplane hangars to offer proof of life, while a polling disinfo campaign by his media bodyguard vouchsafed his inevitable victory. Looked like a sure thing in September, pack up all my cares and woe, and so forth. And then something broke. Well, some news, actually, a wonder considering the Democratic tank that the New York Times, the WashPo, CNN, MSNBC, and all the rest had jumped in. Long about mid-2019, some jamoke in the Jamoke state of Delaware got possession of some laptop computers brought in for servicing on account of water damage. Like what? They fell into a hot tub? Anyway, the customer, one R. Hunter Biden, never retrieved or paid for the computers, which under Delaware law and the service agreement of the computer repair shop became the property of said repair shop. And its proprietor, one John Paul MacIsaac, MacIsaac had a peek inside, one of them that still worked, now legally his property. And lo and behold, he noticed some familiar names among the emails, along with an impressive video of the laptop's owner using drugs while cavorting with a naked woman. MacIsaac contacted the FBI. At first, they brushed him off. But then weeks later, showed up with a subpoena for the computer and seized it. Impeachment season was upon us. And then there's the fellow whose name I can't utter, so I won't, advised by fellow NSC member Colonel Alexander Vindman, had cooked up a whistleblower complaint for crusading congressman and Russiagate impresario Adam Schiff, and the game was on. MacIsaac apparently followed the impeachment soap opera on the airwaves. The proceedings included no mention of the laptop and the information, or shall we say the evidence it contained. He began to grok the significance of the material dumped in his lap by this wayward customer, R. Hunter Biden, and began to wonder how come the FBI was just sitting on all that. You'd think the FBI would have turned it over to the president's lawyers, since it amounted to what might be construed as exculpatory evidence of a high order, or that FBI Director Christopher Wray might have apprised Attorney General William Barr of the laptop's existence. In any event, the president's lawyers made their case against impeachment without it. Weird, a little bit. So more time went by, and MacIsaac grew a little suspicious, a little impatient. The FBI would not deign to return his phone calls. A fastidious fellow, he had made a copy of the laptop's hard drive, so he up and handed another copy over to Rudy Giuliani, a former federal prosecutor of some renown and one of President Trump's lawyers. Giuliani easily recognized what was in there, a detailed map of the Biden family's worldwide grifting operations, plus graphic evidence of our Hunter Biden's moral depravity, which brings us up to date, almost. The bodyguard of news media protection was breaking under the weight of all that bad faith, perfidy, hypocrisy, lying, money grubbing, and depravity. The story of the Biden family's Gothic doings was loose in the land, and despite every strenuous effort to suppress it, and now the suppressors were starting to look really bad. So bad that Twitter founder Jack Dorsey was about to be hauled into a Senate Judiciary Committee for some splaining that is a gentle reminder that he is not the master of the universe he bethinks himself to be, but rather a member of a society based on rules, traditions, and a consensual understanding of decent behavior. That's only the beginning of where this goes. Other leaks are springing in the great Democratic dike, and they are short of little Dutch boy volunteers who can plug the holes, holding back a cold sea of infamy. There is, for instance, the fabled Anthony Weiner laptop, yes, the one that was seized in 2016 as part of the Hillary Clinton email probe. It somehow ended up in the possession of the New York City Police Department. Turns out it contains 340,000 emails between Hillary and her top aide of 20 years, Huma Abedin, wife of disgraced Congressman Anthony Weiner. Trouble is, Weiner had no security clearance, and it was, after all, his laptop. Rumor is that Abedin is now talking to prosecutors. Will that be consequential? Also, it turns out one Bevan Cooney, a former business associate of R. Hunter Biden, who is cooling his heels in the federal slammer for securities fraud conspiracy, was pissed off enough at being left holding the bag that he gave his email account and password to investigative reporter Peter Schweitzer, author of Clinton Cash and Profiles in Corruption, who is now poring over the 26,000 emails exchanged between the various business partners. Wait for it. Also turns out that Devin Archer, another R. Hunter Biden partner and fellow Burisma board member, just had his conviction reinstated in the same securities fraud case that Cooney was convicted in, and Archer faces up to 10 years' time on his charges, an incentive, perhaps, to make a deal for information about a storied career with R. Hunter Biden in exchange for a reduced sentence. The Biden campaign announced on Sunday that it was putting a lid on the candidate's activities for the week so that he can study up for the final debate with President Trump. I suspect there's a whole lot more than that going on in the basement, namely discussions of how Biden might still gracefully withdraw from the race. Let's face it, he's barely been going through the motions for the past 3 months. Joe Biden is a dead man walking. If he stays in, the Democratic Party is finished. Nancy Pelosi can stop worrying about getting her hair done. It will be burnt off entirely. Yes. Donald Trump said that if Biden is elected, Christmas is going to be canceled, which I believe it will be. They canceled Easter and got away with that. So why not? Why not Christmas? We'll get together by Zoom. Maybe we'll send each other, virtual presents. Or I suppose, there's always Amazon, right? I'm going to get to the story of Jeffrey Toobin shortly. Let's see. Yes. America's blacklisters ganged up on Chris Pratt over the weekend because he declined to join an Avengers fundraiser for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Actually, there were two things that Pratt was attacked for: not attending the Biden fundraiser and being a Christian. Those two sins so angered the Twitter blacklisters, so infuriated the cancel culture, that for a time Pratt's name trended on Twitter. In their fevered minds, Pratt not openly supporting Joe Biden and being a Christian can only add up to two things: that Pratt is a Trump supporter and Pratt hates homosexuals. It also blew up with the help of a producer named Amy Berg, who tweeted out a poll asking which Chris had to go. The choice was between Pratt, Chris Hemsworth, Chris Evans, and Chris Pine. I noticed that Amy Berg, her Twitter picture is Ruth Bader Ginsburg wearing boxing gloves. Amy Berg describes herself as TV boss, movie scribe, nerd vivant, currently writing Warrior Nun, The Alienist, Jack Ryan, etc. Well, I have a few iron laws, and one of them is never trust a woman who describes herself as a nerd. Never. Let's see what J5 Killer has to say. Howard Feynman tweeted, Donald Trump couldn't care less whether people are killed directly or indirectly by his super spreader rallies. He thinks they will die after November 3rd in any case. It's literally murderous campaign. Yes. And J5 Killer has a rude comment about that. Yeah. And looking at a bunch of people on Zoom screaming about Trump. I suppose it must be. J5 Killer says, if you hadn't noticed, I really hate our mainstream punditocracy, just a loathsome basket of mediocrities, failures, and witless blowhards. So Jeffrey Toobin getting busted for cranking it on Zoom is like a little pre-election gift to the world, an unexpected delight. Harmeet Adillan says CNN's chief legal analyst's been a known degenerate for many years. This isn't as bad as the whole mistress abortion pressure, denied paternity, denied child support, deadbeat facts. Okay, so let's get directly to that. And the story took a major turn. The original version of the story is that Jeffrey Toomer, who is a legal analyst, I quite enjoyed his book on the O.J. Simpson trial, by the way. But like many, he has a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome and has been, seemingly doolally for years now. So the original story was that Jeffrey Toobin was involved in a Zoom conference, and then he had someone else on Zoom, and he thought that he'd muted the picture. Interesting choice of words. But he hadn't. And so he took his penis out. And I thought, the way he described it's just the kind of thing that would happen, right? It's like, yeah, this thing, that's got to get out. It's got to get out. It's just suffocating in there. I guess that's what a person does, sitting at a desk in front of a computer during a Zoom meeting. Of course. This is from the Daily Mail. The New Yorker magazine has suspended longtime writer Jeffrey Toobin after he exposed himself and masturbated during a work Zoom call. The 60-year-old, who has written for the New Yorker for 25 years, is said to have exposed himself while on a video call with staffers from the magazine and New York public radio station WNYC last week. He is also taking a leave of absence from CNN, for whom he works on air as a legal analyst. He apologized in a statement to Vice, saying he thought he had turned his camera off at the time of the incident. I made an embarrassingly stupid mistake, believing I was off camera. I apologized to my wife, family, friends, and coworkers. I believed I was not visible on Zoom. I thought no one on the Zoom call could see me. I thought I had muted the Zoom video. I apologized to my wife, family, friends, and co-workers. The Zoom call was reportedly an election simulation involving many of the magazine's biggest stars, including Jane Mayer, Evan Osnos, Jelani Cobb, and Sue Halpern. Vice initially reported that the incident involved the exposure of Toobin's dick, but has since updated his story to state that he was allegedly masturbating. The circumstances surrounding the incident are not completely clear. However, two people were on the call have told Motherboard that they witnessed Toobin masturbating. The pair, who did not give their names, said that the incident happened after a break in the call. Toobin apparently seemed to be on a separate call, and when the break was over, could allegedly be seen touching his penis. He then left the call before logging back in shortly afterwards, seemingly unaware at what others had just witnessed. It's also not clear how many staffers were on the video call at the time. A spokesperson for the New Yorker said Toobin had been suspended pending an investigation. Toobin, who regularly uses Twitter, has not tweeted since October 13th. He made an appearance on CNN on Saturday, where he is chief legal analyst for the network. CNN has since said that Toobin asked for some personal time off as he deals with a personal issue, which we have granted. He's been a staff writer at the New Yorker since 1993 and a CNN contributor since 2002. In regards to Simpson's trial, Toobin was the first to report his defense team's plan to accuse LAPD Detective Mark Furman of planting evidence and to play the race card. He's written 9 books in total, including several about the Supreme Court. His latest book, True Crimes and Misdemeanors, The investigation of Donald Trump was published in August. Prior to joining The New Yorker, Toobin had worked as an assistant U.S. attorney in Brooklyn. He is a Harvard University graduate. He lives in New York with his wife, Amy Bennett McIntosh. The couple have 3 children together. I don't see how this marriage can survive. I mean, can you? Can anyone? It just, this is, so what they call, a cry for help. Like when women with lots of money get arrested for shoplifting, that sort of thing. Because, yeah, this is not the sort of thing that, the camera. Lots of people have put tape over their laptop camera that's built in because of a fear that the laptop camera may be spying on you. And why would you want to do that anywhere near a camera? Let's see, according to Wikipedia, Toobin had a long-time off and on extramarital affair with attorney Casey Greenfield. She is the daughter of American television journalist and author Jeff Greenfield and the ex-wife of screenwriter Matt Manfredi. They had a child in 2009, which Toobin initially resisted acknowledging. Ultimately, Toobin's paternity was confirmed with a DNA test, and separately, a Manhattan family court judge ordered Toobin to pay child support. 2020, it's got everything, doesn't it? It's got absolutely everything. And take a look at the chat here. Head McNeck says Mark Zuckerberg famously tapes over his webcam. Yes, I've seen the pictures. Yeah, most likely they will. What Metal Mike says, no doubt they will blame Russia. It was actually Putin's, member. John S. says, boomer tech move. How many decades had he been doing this over phone conference calls? LOL. YouTube 13 says, Toobin not fired, only suspended because too little evidence. Rustin Shackelford says, I'm surprised he didn't blame hacking. Metal Mike says, that happened on an episode of Californication. Jeffrey Toobsot, yes. And of course, the old Seinfeld meme of Elaine saying he took it out. I mean, the very like Warner Brothers cartoon emphasis on particular words. It out. Have you ever seen that episode? I always figured that it must have been a reference to a real thing, and that person was Louis C.K. Because Louis C.K. got busted a couple of years ago, apparently, doing it solo in front of women who were, let's say, rather taken aback. Palpcazo 88 says, Kevin, you should review Ira Levin's This Perfect Day on the book club. Ralph Raico rated it higher than 1984 and Brave New World. Well, I'll write that down. I quite like Ralph Raico, actually. Okay, there we go. He took it out, yes. Yeah. Iron Laws, yes. Yeah, I'll get around to that. British American, was Kunstler saying that everything was going great for Biden until the email surfaced? Trump was winning regardless. It's hard to tell, but again, why would someone not campaign during a presidential election, particularly with 2 weeks left? Because you think that you won, that it's in the bag, that I guess, enough ballots are going to be harvested. So it doesn't really matter what the real result is. Remember that Biden was advised very strongly, was it by Bill or Hillary Clinton or by both of them, not to concede under any circumstances. Halper says Biden embodies how neutral politicians are. They're carts to load your ideology and ambitions onto. As long as they're well-oiled and getting into famous places, they're happy. Yeah. See, what's become commonplace in recent years is the ex post facto bribe. But I guess, Biden, he sort of blew it in that regard because he was in office for so very long. 6 Senate terms and then 2 terms as vice president. And now he's, 77 years old? He's going to be 78 in January, I believe, something like that. And it's too late in the day, so I guess he was forced to steal while he was in the Senate and when he was vice president. Yo Mama says Biden remembers the McKinley Front Porch campaigns from his childhood. Yes, that must be it. Okay. I want to talk about the war on normality. There is a singer who I have heard of, and she calls herself FKA Twigs. There's a story about her in the Daily Mail. I couldn't really afford to be good. I had to be excellent. FKA Twigs says she was pushed to excel by her parents in order to stand out as a mixed race child. And there's a picture that illustrates, the lead picture is the cover from the New York Times Style magazine. She looks like a ghoul. She seriously looks like a ghoul. This isn't a situation, like Alice Cooper or Marilyn Manson, dressing up on stage because they're playing a role. This is her just, going about her normal life, and she looks like a ghoul. And of course, she has a ring through her septum, but because of course she does. Yes, and it's a story of discrimination that she suffered, etc., etc. I don't know to what extent that is true. As it turns out, her actual name is Talila Barnett. A little exotic, but it's a pretty good name. Better than FKA Twigs. And what is FKA? Formerly known as? No, that would be too simple. There's this exhaustive explanation. I just wanted a selection of letters that sounded quite kind of masculine and strong. FKA worked. It doesn't stand for anything. It's just capital letters. I just had this idea that a few years ago, there was some bored record company executive, and he was thinking, yeah, pretty much seen it all in this job. He said, how about I take an absolute ghoul with a ridiculous name and make that person a star? I wonder if I could pull that off. And yes, absolutely. Absolutely. This woman's been in gossip columns, or was, because she had a 3-year relationship with Robert Pattinson, the actor. And I'm thinking, why are you with this? Why are you with this woman? I mean, young women seem to be quite taken with you, Robert. And so you decided to have a relationship with an absolute ghoul? I mean, I suspect, that cats would begin hissing and their fur would puff out, or that children would scream and cry if they ever saw this person. Story number 2 in the war on normality. Yes, gender roles, rigid gender roles. Where are these rigid gender roles? All of these people are fighting against rigid gender roles. What? That battle was won a long time ago. The fight, that is. This is from the Mail. Emma Wills has been praised for breaking gender stereotypes. Oh, there's still gender stereotypes by fans, as she shared a photo of her son Ace on her Instagram page over the weekend. And I don't know, I'm thinking that perhaps, prison sentence would be justified for someone who decided to call their son Ace. Okay, you could have that as a nickname, but no, that's not a real name. So the TV presenter 44 hailed her son Ace 8 as her biggest style inspiration, as she shared a snap of him wearing a pink crop top, ripped jeans, and pink Nike trainers. Emma and her husband, 37, are very private with their family life and keep the faces of their kids, Isabel, 11, Ace, and Trixie, 4, hidden in any social media posts. Yes, here she is on Instagram. Emma Willis, my little style icon, Ace, not Matt. And what do you think the reaction was? What do you think the reaction was, particularly from women, other women in the industry? I'm sure you can guess. Fans praised the presenter for posting the photo, with one saying, "Just shows how far we have to go in breaking down gender stereotypes. Pink is simply a color. Hair grows. Let kids or adults wear whatever they want." No, that's not going to work. For one reason, a lot of kids are just never going to take their pajamas off. That's all they're ever going to wear. Another added, "So what if this boy has beautiful long blonde hair and wears a pink t-shirt? I bet he smiles a million more times a day than you miserable judgy adults. Commenting on this child, #GetALife." Just show, yes, gender stereotypes. Your son is an inspiration, says Rachi Jas, coming from a mummy of a son who loves pink, rainbows, and his Elsa dress. He is following his own story and not bound by stupid society stereotypes. Lucy Mufafa says, "So what if this boy has beautiful long..." Yeah, here we go. "Oh my God, this could be my little boy," says Yvi Danielle. "He's totally alternative. Bracelets, ear cuffs, pink teeny shorts when it's freezing, pink leopard and hair bands and buns. Makes me beam with pride that he's so individual and clear what he likes." You're feeling a trend here that a great many women seem to be determined to erase a masculinity, or perhaps just to erase men, because it's so cute when you take a boy and you turn him into a girl. It's so cute, is it? The same people who think that it's so cute are the very same people who are going to whine to you about the extraordinarily high suicide rate of transgender people. Do you ever think there might be a reason for that extraordinarily high suicide rate? Well, let's see. Jackie JXY, who has some stuff on her face. "You have a beautiful family, man. By the way, Ace looks so cool. Proper awesome that you're letting him rock whatever style he wants to rock. Big love." Are they Scientologists, perhaps? Scientologists famously believe that children should be allowed to do whatever they want. I just have this sad feeling that some years down the road, Ace is going to be absolutely furious with his mother over this incident. Why did you let me dress as a girl? Do you know how embarrassing that has become for me? But no, it's just such a cute story, and got to fight back against what? Fight back against what? There's hardly any. All of the doors have been kicked in already. Here's another story from the Mail. Demand for non-binary child actors is on the rise as casting directors push for more diversity on screen, talent agent claims. Mark German, founder of UK's Mark German Management and Stage Schools, explained casting directors are pushing for greater diversity among children on screen. German, who represents adult and child actors told how he had recently sent a non-binary teenage client to audition for a casting director who had initially put a call out for girls. And there's pictures of two people. One of them, named Liv Hewson, is wearing perhaps the most preposterous outfit I have ever seen a woman wear. It also looks dangerous. And then there's Lachlan Watson. Oh, well, yeah, I guess they decided right at the beginning that this was going to be non-binary, because Lachlan, of course, is not a girl's name. But no, wait a minute. Yeah, I don't know whether this is, it's just, it is a frightening creature. Whatever it is terrifying. We have booked a commercial for a teenage non-binary actor on our books called Cam. The casting director had initially asked for girls, but I said I was sending this non-binary person in, and once they met them, that's the direction they went in. Is there kind of a threat of blackmail, of being canceled there? Because, I could tell you that if I were a casting director and I asked for girls and they sent not girls, I would be unhappy. And I think I would decide to work with a different company. As well as that, BAME actors and diversity in general is a really big and important thing. It's vital to be seen on TV. Whether you are gay, non-binary, or anything else, there will be opportunities now, which I'm really thrilled about. We're definitely seeing a really good shift in what they call blind casting, which can only be a good thing. German, whose clients include Emily B. Smith and Benjamin Evan Ainsworth, who are starring in Netflix's The Haunting of Bly Manor, also said casting directors are seeking out children with regional accents. Regional accents are very in vogue. It used to be you had to talk with a plum in your mouth. Was this guy frozen in the 1950s or something? Regional accents have been very, very popular in the entertainment industry since the 1960s, perhaps even before that. Oh, yes, we're fighting against, BBC English. That fight was won long time ago. So you listen to people like Jamie Oliver, who grew up in a very middle-class family, and he speaks in this absurd Mockney voice. It's like he's got pillow mouth, as Charlie Brooker described it. Food's got to be quick, it's got to be tasty. Why would this is the way he's chosen to talk? Presumably, if he spoke like a middle-class person, then he wouldn't be as successful. German says you need supportive parents. Yeah, supportive is not exactly the word I would use. There will be trips to London, changes that happen last minute, tapes that need to be sent in an hour. Especially now, we're seeing so much being taped at home, and parents have to be really careful with how kids are presented. Oh, yes, speaking of gender stereotypes, I've almost come to the conclusion that all of the media is just a psyop now. And it is getting us to ignore everything that we know to be true. I was speaking of Scientologists previously. Well, Willow Smith and brother Jaden felt shunned by Black community as they were seen as too weird for defying gender norms. Really, now, this Black culture has been thoroughly colonized by the alphabet people, but no, they're defying gender norms, and wow, no one has ever done that before. Willow Smith has been known to push some boundaries since making her musical debut back in 2010, but the Emmy nominee hasn't always been embraced for her avant-garde aesthetic and her authentic self-expression. She revealed Tuesday on her family's Facebook Watch talk show, Red Table Talk, that she and brother Jaden felt shunned by the Black community over their defiance of gender norms. I'm looking at a picture of Jaden Smith here. This poor fellow, he just seems so stupid. The 19-year-old opened up specifically with the African-American community. I kind of felt like me and Jaden were shunned a little bit We're not going to take pride in them because they're too different. They're too weird. Even some of our family members, I feel they thought you're too different. Yeah, this woman was highly sexualized in her performance at a very young age. There's something really creepy about this brother and sister. It came in response to mom Jada Pinkett, 49, who opened up her experience with mom sharing, which was the topic of this week's show. Jada revealed, over the years, I've had my fair share of mom shaming. Oh, mom shaming, not mom sharing. I was thinking about, of course, Jada. She got caught having an affair with a younger man, and it's a great embarrassment to her husband, Will Smith. And there's a picture of the young one here, and she's got a ring in her nose, interceptum, because of course she does. And she appears to be in a rage, or she's weeping. This is a famous and rich person whining that apparently, there's nothing there. Willow and Jaden, 22, have long been known for their gender fluid presentations, Willow shaving her head and her brother opting for skirts on occasions. She opened about her sexuality last June in another Red Table Talk, telling Jada and grandmother, Adrienne Banfield Norris, 66, I love men and women equally, so I would definitely want one man, one woman. I feel like I could be polyfidelitous with those two people. Polyfidelity is a form of non-monogamy in which all members of the relationship are considered equal partners. The Whip My Hair artist added, I'm not the kind of person that is constantly looking for new sexual experiences. I focus a lot on the emotional connection, and I feel like if I had to find two people of different genders that I really connected with and we had a romantic and sexual connection, I don't feel like I would feel the need to try and go find more. This confession by females in the entertainment business that they are not heterosexual women, this is now de rigueur. It is universal. But no, each time it happens, it's supposed to be, brave and forthright. And there's a picture of Jaden in a stupid outfit, giving a peace sign and looking like he has an IQ of 60. Every time I see that guy, I think, how does he manage to tie his shoes without strangling himself? Although Jaden hasn't explicitly discussed his sexuality, he's referred to Tyler, the creator, 29, as his boyfriend in the past. Okay, that's enough of that. But wait, there's more. Willow Smith is seen in a tie-dye top with long hair as she lands in New York City after working through an existential crisis with mystic Sadhguru. Sadhguru. Let's see. She shared a post last week where she revealed she had sought help from visionary Sadhguru as she's been going through an existential crisis. But wait a minute, I thought, she's gender bender, polyfidelitous. Maybe putting your kids into show business is a very, very bad idea. Maybe letting your children do whatever they want is a very, very bad idea. So let's see. What is this? Oh, and here's another picture of her where she appears to be weeping. But isn't she supposed to be a role model? If all this had been working out so well for her, why would she constantly be crying? Oh, and she repeats the business about how apparently she's too weird for African Americans. Yep, more pictures of her crying. And yeah. So, I came across this. I think it could have been a promoted tweet. It's from something called Parents Dome, which is something that I've never heard of previously. And they did the impossible. And then there's an emoji. How far would you go for love? And 3 emojis. And there's a couple here. And the man, they both look like they're, I don't know, they're in their 30s. The man looks like he's about, I don't know, 30, 40 pounds overweight. And the woman looks like she's 120 pounds overweight. And she's showing a lot of skin. And then there's another couple where this man actually looks like he's not overweight, where the woman is just 40 pounds overweight. And then there's a picture of a man, a thin man, with a woman who appears to be, I don't know, 150 pounds overweight. This is mega inspiring, apparently. I don't know why. Let's see, Lexi Reed had issues with her weight ever since childhood. She was a happy and outgoing person and didn't let her weight get to her. Even though she tried multiple times to lose weight through different regimens, it always came back. Seriously, any person who's as fat as this woman would have to be pretty much eating continuously. Wouldn't go 5 minutes without a show. By the young age of 25, Lexi weighed in at 392 pounds. And the extra weight was impacting her quality of life. Wow, really? She tried her best to live the best life possible, one of joy and happiness, but it was definitely getting in the way of accomplishing her dreams. Lexi continued on her life's journey and eventually met the love of her life, Danny Reed. Lexi would describe him as her best friend of 10 years. Danny loved Lexi for the person she was, no matter what size or shape. While Danny loved and supported Lexi at every turn, there was one issue. He also had unhealthy eating habits and lived an unhealthy sedentary lifestyle. It turns out he was a bit too supportive in those ways. Both Danny and Lexi were overweight. Danny, who was just a couple of years older than Lexi, weighed in around 280 pounds. Together, the couple spiraled into an even more sedentary lifestyle. That's a terrible metaphor. And ate unhealthy food to their heart's content. You can fit at any weight, apparently. And it seems to be really grossly irresponsible. Actually, this was published July the 30th of this year, when we're in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic, where everyone knows that obesity is one of the worst comorbidities for this disease. It's also, I don't know how this woman could actually, walk to the kitchen and back without being drenched in sweat or finding it impossible to breathe. But no, you see, we need to break down those stereotypes about what constitutes what constitutes beauty, what constitutes attractiveness. Let's have a look at the chat. A 30-pound overweight man equals 150-pound overweight woman. My trail of disgraces: women who describe themselves as nerds usually are not, nor have they ever been. I think with a lot of these women, maybe nerds like them because, that's about my speed. And so, they're orbited. They're orbited by these sad men who would, never work up the courage to, ask them out for a date. Bicycles. Oh, fat bottom girls. Yes, that's an old Queen song, isn't it? How did it go? Fat bottom girls make the world go round, or some such. Debrea said, when I was a child, my dream was to become a bicyclist because I had no bicycle. Metal Mike mentions Kim Mitchell for some reason. Jaden Smith knows karate, and so no one should make fun of him, says Metal Mike. LOL, the lady of the ring, who's there? I've seen that video, the one about her hair, and I'm thinking, the tossing of the hair in this violent way. Apparently, a lot of these people in metal bands, they get, serious neck problems because of all that. I think Willow Smith probably developed that just in, however many hours it took to shoot that video. MCT says Kim was originally a boy's name, Rudyard Kipling. Jonathan Pohl, hello, professor, says if LGBTQ are alphabet people, then what do we call FBI, CIA, KGB? Call them people who glow in the dark. Some people call them that. Metatron says the BBC needs more Geordie. I'm just thinking, if you're familiar with Alan Partridge, when he was staying at Travel Tavern, what Chris Morris called it. He called his seedy grief hole. That one of the members of this hotel staff was a Geordie, and at one point he's trying to explain something to him, and Alan Partridge says, "That's just noise." But he had a very thick Geordie accent in that show. Does Lachlan have a Jocelyn? Says Chogokin 666. Chogokin 666. I never forgave my parents for giving me a girl's name. Just extra baggage one doesn't need. Yeah, there was this American writer I quite liked. He was a novelist. He also reviewed for National Review back when National Review was actually worth reading. And he was called D. Keith Mano. And he once said, I'm not going to tell you what my first name is. It's not Dolores, but it's as bad as that. And I wondered, wow, how bad could it be? But why the D? Why not just drop your first name in entirely? Metatron says, besides having a morbid sense of humor, what advice can you give to keep one's spirits up in this frankly insane time? At this point, I'm thinking of Boog or that meteor. Don't like this. Well, the U.S. election's on November the 3rd. And if Trump wins, it's going to be like, the opposition, la résistance. It's going to be, like an infection erupting from a pustule. We're going to see scenes that are remarkable. Millions of people are going to suffer nervous breakdowns. And I think that if Trump wins, the illusion, that the usual suspects, the deep state, the media are in charge, it's going to be hard to sustain that. So we've just got 2 weeks to go. And I don't know how much crazier it could get, but we've seen no end to it. A story from Breitbart from Alana Mastrangelo. San Diego system changes grading system to be anti-racist. Now, why would a grading system be racist? Ex post facto, I guess black children are not doing as well as others. The new grading removes non-academic factors, with the school district using the example of turning in homework late. How is that a non-academic factor, by the way? And so these students are going to be allowed to take as long as they like? Really? For months, the district has been working on multiple areas of its operations, including grading, in efforts to make them more anti-racist and equitable, partly in response to social justice protests that erupted over the summer in response to George Floyd's death, reported the San Diego Union Tribune. Now, the school district's new grading system will no longer take into account what the district calls non-academic factors, such as handing in classroom work late and student behavior. Yeah. Yelling at the teacher, screaming obscenities, starting fights, that's clearly a non-academic factor. Yes. Some students may have struggles related to home. Oh, okay. Or other responsibilities that affect their ability to turn in their work on time and learn content before a test. How are these people supposed to survive in the world after they graduate from high school? Is that everything that they have been told in school is because I'm black, which means I get to do whatever I want. These children are in for a really nasty surprise. Students will no longer be docked in their academic grades for turning in working late or other factors related to work habits. Those aspects of student behavior will be judged in a separate citizenship grade. School officials say that these changes are in part meant to address racial and other disparities in grading practices. According to data, Black students received D or F grades 20% of the time, and Hispanic students received D and F grades 23% of the time. Meanwhile, white students received these grades 7% of the time, while Asian students 6% of the time. The district-wide average for D and F grades was 16%. If we're actually going to be an anti-racist school district, we have to confront practices like this that have been going on for years and years, said USD Vice President Richard Barrera. I think this reflects a reality that students have described to us, and it's a change that's a long time coming. So they're going to make graduation from high school even less meaningless than it is already. But wait, here's some good news. This is from News Pub, Jasmine Bull. This is the actual headline. World record, New Zealand elects queerest parliament in the world. Now, I'm looking at a picture of a building here, which I'm assuming is what the Legislative Assembly for New Zealand, and it looks like a nuclear reactor cooling tower. Someone sent me pictures on Twitter a couple of days ago of some modernist Catholic churches that the author thought weren't too bad. And one of them, I don't know, because it's San Francisco, it looks like a nuclear reactor cooling tower. I don't think a church should look like a nuclear reactor cooling tower. And I guess Jacinda Ardern was reelected. New Zealanders have elected the queerest parliament of the world, surpassing former world leader, the United Kingdom. Saturday's election results show that there will likely be 11 rainbow members in New Zealand's 120-seat parliament, up from the previous 7. Why is that automatically considered to be a good thing? In the UK, there are currently 45 openly gay members in the 650-member House of Commons, or 7%. New Zealand is now at 9.16%, which is pretty amusing, considering that, what are we looking at? Percentage of the population of these people, 1.5%, 2%. Labour now has 7 alphabet people representatives, and the Greens 4. I got to say that the rise of the Green Party, that is a seriously unpleasant development. No one who works for a living has ever voted for the Green Party. Who votes for the Green Party? People with inherited wealth, people who work in government, people who work in NGOs. And the rise of the Green Party, you can sort of chart how many useless people there are by how many seats the Green Party wins. In June, former National Party leader Todd Muller said ensuring an alphabet people representative was not a particular focus. It's not something I'm particularly focused on, ensuring that we find someone who may or may not represent the alphabet community. Labour's alphabet people members include Finance Minister Grant Robinson and Manariwa MP Louisa Wall, who submitted the bill to legalize same-sex marriage in 2012. Openly gay Labour MPs include newly elected Wellington List Aisha Verrill and Northcote MP Shannon Halber. Yeah, the list. So you're not voting. You don't get to vote for your representatives in New Zealand. Yeah, they're from a list, right? Which, of course, these people who talk about electoral reform, like Andrew Coyne, yeah, there's something terrible about having to actually vote the person who's going to represent you rather than these people being chosen by the party. So it's even more full of hacks than it would already. Let's see, special votes. Oh, no, wait. About 40% of Green Party MPs are from the rainbow community. Quelle surprise. Special votes, which can be returned and counted up to 10 days after Election Day, mean that the number of alphabet people representations at the House of Representatives could still change. Special votes include votes made overseas by post-in, by prisoners on remand, and prisoners sentenced to less than 3 years. If the Green Party loses its number 9 and 10 seats, currently held by rainbow members, Parliament's current alphabet people representation could decrease. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. In 2009, Parliament named one of its 11 select committee meeting rooms Rainbow Room, dedicated to gay, lesbian, and transgender New Zealanders. More fun than a barrel of monkeys, no doubt. I'll say something briefly about Canada before I sign off. China has been much in the news lately. The diplomatic spat, this is from CTV News, the diplomatic spat between Canada and China grew more heated on Monday as Beijing denounced press criticism of its ambassador to Ottawa, only to have Canada's deputy prime minister and opposition leader echo the criticism. The exchange comes at a moment when ties between the countries are at their lowest point in years, largely due to China's outrage over Canada's detention of a top executive of Chinese telecoms giant Huawei and the subsequent arrest of 2 Canadians. The new friction arose when China's ambassador to Canada, Kang Peiwu, branded pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong as violent criminals. Instead of Canada grants them asylum, it would amount to interference in China's internal affairs. Quote, if the Canadian side really cares about the stability and prosperity in Hong Kong and really cares about the good health and safety of those 300,000 Canadian passport holders in Hong Kong and the large number of Canadian companies operating in Hong Kong SAR, you should support those efforts to fight violent crimes, he said in a video news conference from the Chinese. So, Prime Minister Trudeau announced that, come on down from Hong Kong to Canada, because apparently we have a terrible shortage of immigrants in this country. Apparently we have a terrible shortage of Chinese. But what really leapt out at me, but the idiocy of this, how many thousands of Chinese communist fifth columnists are going to be insinuated into this group of refugees? It's a national security minefield. But the Chinese are throwing their weight around. Wang, Cherry Wang, the executive director of Alliance Canada Hong Kong, said Kong's comment is a direct threat to all Canadians. Wang said China has ignored, trampled on, and now torn to shreds its handover agreement for Hong Kong by enacting the new national security law. Their actions are the reason that many Hong Kongers are seeking asylum in Canada, because they no longer feel safe in Hong Kong or their human rights will be protected in Hong Kong under the control of the new national security law. I don't know that there's anything Canada can do about that, frankly. One thing that Canada could do is decouple from China. But as I've said previously, it seems to me that Canada's level of being suborned is probably equal to or greater than Australia's. And a final look at the chat. Okay, people making jokes about Chinese names. Chokokin 666 won slaves at her parents' laundry before and after school, yet got A's and perfect attendance. Yeah. Oh, chess is now racist, says Metatron. I can guess why. And guess why? Of course, black people, they like to chess hustle, or they used to. Washington Square Park, maybe they still do. But there have been, I don't know that there have been any high-ranking black chess players. not in the United States and not anywhere. I stand to be corrected. Again, Chogokin 666, Chinese kids I went to school with, lived and worked above a busy Chinese restaurant and mahjong opium den gambling parlor, and always did well. Yeah. So that's it for today. I'll be back on the air tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. What's coming up on the show? Well, let's take a look here. On Theater Thursday, I'm going to talk about Werner Herzog's 1979 Nosferatu. And on the book club, I am going to be discussing, yes, Peter Kemp's memoir, Mine Were of Trouble, which is about fighting for Franco in the Spanish Civil War. If you like the show or any part of it, I'd appreciate it if you'd click on the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already done so. If you would like to support this live stream with a donation, you can do so through PayPal, where my address is kevin_grace@hotmail.com. Once again, kevin_grace@hotmail.com. If you're Canadian, you can send money directly via Interac at kevingrace@shaw.ca. And I will leave you with this. In these days of social atomization and civilizational collapse, I do dearly wish that you, my dear listeners and viewers, find a genuine human connection in order to ease the burden. Good night.